In addition to other changes that colleagues might suggest, under the Rules Committee order, item 3.4, we'll be allowing 4 minutes for every council member to speak on those items. That item 3.4 will be heard last. Item 4.1 will be heard immediately after consent. And are there other changes to the printed agenda? Councilmember Khamis.
Yeah, and I remember discussing it on the rules, but I think you're quite correct. But I have to say that I'm disappointed that my colleagues on Rules Committee found it necessary for us to take up 17 statewide propositions to put on the city official record. Many issues are at best tangentially related to our city, and usually when I make my decisions, I'm not saying usually, I always, when it comes to city business, I analyze both sides. I ask experts on both sides to let me know their opinions. I deliberate and consider the unintended consequences. I consider the financial impact to our city and to our citizens. I never just do what's politically expedient. And I think that this is, that we're making decisions here willy-nilly and for basically political reasons. And now you're asking us to vote without enough information, without enough contemplation, without enough investigation, and at least to my satisfaction. We don't even have a thorough analysis from our city staff on each of these propositions that we'll be voting on today. To me, it seems like we're shooting first and aiming later strategy, and I'm really disappointed. In fact, these 17 statewide issues are a distraction of what we really need to vote on and consider today, which is one of the largest land use development in the city of San Jose, bringing hundreds of jobs and millions of new tax dollars. We also have the police overtime and police staffing issue that are extremely important to the city of San Jose. And just to give you an example, this is the third time, me personally, that I'm taking a position in my 3.9 years on City Council on things that are related or equal to the Proposition 59. This is the third time I'm considering it, and we've always voted the same way each time. And this actually deals with the corporate donations in federal elections. Many may not know that but well before the Supreme Court ruling loosened federal campaign finance rules, the state of California was already allowing unlimited corporate union and special interest donations to political parties.
Yes. We'll consider the individual items at the time. If you'd like to make a motion to drop that item, you certainly could do so now, but this is just on rules of the day.
Well, I wanted to see if we can, in the rules of the day, I want to see if we can separate out each item so that we have the ability to ask questions of staff related to each item before we take decisions on each and every item, because
we can take up the specific rules on that item. If you'd like to simply drop it, you can certainly make that motion.
No, I'm not talking about that one item. That was just an example.
No, I'm talking about all the items. It sounds as though you'd prefer not to hear any of the items.
Oh, I would definitely make a motion to drop all the items.
Okay. So we have a specific motion on orders of the day to drop item 3.4. We'll take that motion before we take on the rest of the orders of the day. Is that right, Rick?
Yes.
Okay. On that motion, Vice Mayor?
I'd like to make a substitute motion. And I was going to make a motion to approve orders of the day. Can I do that with this, or should I confine it to 3.4?
Okay, yeah, I think the motion is essentially bifurcated from the rest of the orders of the day.
Then I will make a substitute motion on 3.4, that we hear it, that we hear the item.
Okay. Second. There's a motion and second to hear item 3.4. Yes.
I was going to modify it. Can I go ahead and do the modification because it's part of orders of the day? Can I add that in the motion?
All right.
Okay. So then I would say, and as a part of that, add the 4-minute total. We're at a 4-minute limit on anyone speaking, and that's for the total item. So you could allocate that 4 minutes in any way you want, but it is a total of 4 minutes only, and that it's heard last in orders of the day. That's my motion.
Okay. And presumably as I would understand the motion, if this passes, that we would treat the slate of items a bit like a consent agenda. We know that there may be individual items that council members may differ with staff on, and we can pull those items off to have a separate vote should council members decide they want to exercise a unique vote on those items. Is that agreeable to you, Vice Mayor?
Yes, and I just want to point out that there's, I believe, 7 items that there's a staff recommendation on, and 7 or so in the remainder, there's no position. So I think, it's going to be the items that people care about, and hopefully the rest can be gone through rather swiftly.
Okay, so there is a substitute motion on Councilmember Peros.
Just to be clear, so that was 4 minutes total, right? Not 4 minutes per.
Correct.
4 minutes total.
And I actually appreciate that, but I also kind of wanted a little context on, just because first time second time I'm seeing this, right? It was 2 minutes last week. And so what is are there any kind of guidelines around that?
Perhaps let me explain. I think Councilmember Oliverio very adeptly found a way around it last week. I think it should simply be 4 minutes, regardless of how that time is used. And that's up to the council member how to use it, whether questioning or making statements. The reason for the special rule, as we discussed at Rules Committee, is this. Many of these items are items over which we simply have no control as a city. And the idea that we would have hours-long debates, and I've seen this before under our previous administration, where we'd have hours-long debates over ballot propositions at the state level, really to very little end, because there is no campaign literature out there that will list the San Jose City Council as an endorser. That will unlikely have any effect over how anyone votes. It simply is not our time best used. So that's why we would have limits on time speaking, and we'll try this and see how it works.
Okay, and I guess it was maybe even more of a legal question, just on the ability to restrict and what items. I do get it with some of these items that kind of go beyond the initial context of what we could affect change on here locally, and wasting time on stuff like that, or spending, somebody may feel it's not wasted, but spending a lot of time on it. So, Rick, if you can.
Yeah, the ground rules for the debate, this comes out of the Rules Committee. It's a recommendation, and the council can either adopt it or not. The mayor also has the power to establish time limits. You see, he typically does that in the case of going from 2 minutes to 1 minute. But the council can the council can override that on a majority vote. So
that is for the public, though.
Typically, it is the public, but the rules resolution says the mayor may establish time limits. So it's silent as to
for anyone as well.
So again, a majority of the council can override that as well. So this is really coming out of the Rules Committee. This isn't the chair. The Rules Committee is making the recommendation. I think the vice mayor's motion is the recommendation that came out of Rules, the council. It's your meeting. And you can vote however you want to conduct your meeting in terms of debate.
Okay, I appreciate that. It was like I said, in context, and I didn't know where it was coming from and how far this might stretch in the future, and just kind of concerned that those of us up here, at least, that are elected to have voice, are not muffled, and that we have an ability then, I guess, if there is a time when we feel as though we don't want to agree with a restrained time limit, then we have that ability to make that decision. I actually do agree with it this time, so I'll support the substitute motion. Thanks.
Okay, Councilmember Oliverio.
Thank you, Mayor. At this meeting, at the last meeting, you as mayor both said that Councilmember Oliverio was getting around the rules by the way he conducted himself, and I want to say I'm personally offended.
Okay.
When I take the time to ask questions of staff or a county supervisor that's visiting that are thoughtful and pertinent, I wouldn't consider that to be getting around the rules. So in the end of the day, I'm all for time limits, but I'm actually for all the items on the council agenda. I think brevity would be key, and I'm on board with Mr. Khamis's topics about staying on things that are pertinent to the city. We're having obviously a big item tonight, and I think those are important, but understand that if I ask a question that's on the topic, seeking information, that's just doing my job.
I appreciate that, Councilmember Oliverio. Obviously, it was not received in the lighthearted way it was intended. So I'm sorry if any offense was taken. Councilmember Khamis.
In that light, we are going to be, if this council sees that this is an important enough item to put it on our agenda, should we not deliberate on each one of these important topics? Do we not want to take a position on understanding what's happening with criminal sentencing on 57? We were just going to say yes or no or neutral without actually doing our homework and asking experts on subject matter? Are we not going to, Proposition 53 are revenue bonds that we as a city actually moved to limit the use of revenue bonds, and now we're taking, a staff recommendation is to support. These are extremely weighty topics, and as everybody thinks that they're making an important decision that is going to carry weight with the rest of the state of California on this, then I think that we should make an educated decision, and a 4-minute time limit on every single topic doesn't scratch the surface of the questions that I might have on any single topic for me to make a decision. And so I have to say that if we want to take this seriously, we should take it seriously and do the homework. If we're just going to make a politically expedient exercise of making some of our political bases happy, then go right ahead and require a 4-minute. And I just don't want to agree with it. I think that this is just, if the way it's being forced on us is to make a political expediency rather than to make an educated decision, and I won't stand for it.
Councilmember Rocha.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually had a few questions, but they've been asked since then, and now I'm kind of left wondering where we're going to go with this. I share some of my concerns from my colleagues for different reasons. And at this point now, to try and lighten the mood a little bit, I'm going to ask a question. If I go over my 4 minutes, what is going to happen to me? Is it you? Is it security? Who's going to...
There's no force or threat of force that will be exercised in any way on this dais.
Thank you. Well, in the future, I'm comfortable. I know oftentimes I'm a man of few words on some of these council action items, so I don't expect I'd be the one that would be going for long periods of time debating or deliberating on a particular item that may not have a lot of significant value to San Jose and the work we do here in this building. I'm just a little uncomfortable with the time limit thing. I understand the intent, and I support the intent. But again, in the next item, do we make the same case going forward? I hate to use that same phrase, slippery slope. I'm not concerned about my words being muffled or me not getting my opinion out. I'm just a little concerned about the precedent we're going to set. And if this is only intended for these particular action items in the whole gamut of issues we ever work on in City Hall, and this is the only one we're ever going to limit council debate, I could probably get there, but that wasn't a discussion we ever had ahead of time, and I appreciate the Rules Committee probably spent time on that. So thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, it's a good time to mention Council Policy 0-11 is going to come back to the full council after we go through rules, because we've had these debates really in various forms for a few years now where, someone wants to consider a resolution about war in Syria, for example, undoubtedly a very important item, but one over which we have virtually no control. And our residents obviously expect us to get work done in areas where we do have control. And so this is essentially dipping our toe in the water around how we can establish some parameters to enable us to get work done that we need to get done if it is the will of the council to still consider those matters that are beyond our control. So that is all this is, and that's why it was introduced last week on an item relating to a county measure. Now we're introducing it relating to state measures. Councilmember Tam Nguyen?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to find out what are we deciding on, because I think my colleague make a lot of sense. I want to follow that and make sure that we vote right.
So right now, Vice Mayor Herrera has a superseding motion that would allow us to hear these items with a 4-minute time limit and some other conditions. If you would like to support that with 6 votes, then we'll impose those conditions on ourselves. If you want to have if that motion fails, then we'll consider a different approach. Actually, we'll consider the underlying motion, which is not to consider any of these items at all.
That's why I want to,
Yeah.
I'm interested, I'm going to clarify, my colleague, the Khamis motion, is that to eliminate this item from the agenda? And is that been
Yeah, that's the
seconded?
underlying motion.
Is it still alive, or we're going to
Yeah.
wait?
So under the rules of order, we have to take Vice Mayor Herrera's motion first.
All right.
If that fails, then we can consider the underlying motion.
There we go, thank you.
Okay. Vice Mayor Herrera?
So I just want to say a couple of things that was brought up at rules. I think one of my colleagues brought up the fact that it is arguing in terms of wanting to hear 3.4. Some of the items that are recommended that the city support, we've actually been involved in. For example, Prop 67 to overturn a ban on single-use plastic bags. There's things that the council's been involved in, taking positions on, and then, coming to us. So some of those probably have more importance than us weighing in. The other thing I want to say is we have a lobbyist who works, Betsy Shotwell, who brought this report to us. So the city pays money to send her to Sacramento and to bring back things that she recommends we take a position on, sometimes oppose, sometimes support. And many of these, as I pointed out already, 10 of them, she's saying no position. So this council certainly has the ability on those 10 to treat them like a consent agenda and say, we're going to follow the recommendation of our legislative person and take no position. I'm most concerned personally about the ones where she's recommended a position. I also am representing the mayor on the League of Cities, and I'm, in fact, traveling there this evening, and some of these things get discussed at a state level, and other cities like to know where San Jose stands on these issues. So it is important as we work locally, but we know that we also work at a statewide level. We were just celebrating the fact that we had a bill that was put forward by Assemblyman Nora Campos that passed that allows us now to move forward on our tiny homes initiative. So we know that what the state legislature does is important. It does connect with San Jose. And so there are many of these things that are important. And so I really hope that my colleagues will support hearing this item. I think Rules struggled with trying to come up with a compromise. I really appreciate the mayor, acknowledging that some of the things we want to hear here are important, but also limiting the time, acknowledging that we shouldn't take an inordinate amount of time to discuss each one of these things. So this was a compromise that was crafted by Rules, and hopefully we'll meet with your approval. Thank you.
Councilmember Khamis?
Yes, and at Rules, I did try to take away the discussions for items for the ones that we're trying to go neutral on by just tabling those, but those didn't go my way either. So if we are going to be voting, even in a neutral manner, on the death penalty, for example, or on the decriminalization of marijuana, or on condoms in the porn industry, or on gun control, these are all weighty topics, and if all of us feel that it's really important for us to make a decision, a yes or no vote, then I urge you to think about limiting the discussion time and allowing as many questions as necessary for us to make an educated decision. And number two, taking them up at least one at a time so that we can actually think about each one in a specific way. Otherwise, we're just giving carte blanche to one of our employees who I actually happen to respect greatly, but disagree with her decisions from time to time on things that she will advocate on the city position. I often question her on things like bonds for playgrounds, for example, that I've been very vocal about. It's not to say that she's not doing her work, but we shouldn't take her work as the absolute bottom line of the way the city's going to vote. And so that's why I'm asking for, if either you take it all out and just leave it alone, or at least allow us to debate it and think about these things in a way that will educate us and make us able to take an educated vote.
Okay, Councilmember Alvario.
I already see the future, political mailer or commercial on October 4th in broad daylight when Councilmember X, Y, and Z chose not to take a stance on cigarettes, school bonds, Medi-Cal, pornography, death penalty, marijuana, carry-out bags, etc. That's all this is. It's so to the point of I don't think anyone, and any other city, before they vote, are so concerned about what the status of San Jose is going to be on a particular matter, just the same way I don't care what another city is doing on a particular statewide ballot measure versus reading the ballot statements and understanding what it does. I still support, as I've supported the entire time for 10 years, only dealing with things that are pertinent to the city of San Jose. I really wish the Rules Committee would have taken the suggestion from Councilmember Khamis about leaving these items off, at least the neutral items, but here we are having a extended dialogue that I'm sure is past 4 minutes.
You're correct. Councilmember Colorado.
You know, these are state matters. I do agree Councilmember Oliverio has been consistent in the time that I've served with them on these matters, but we do take positions, and this is not something of international affairs. These are California propositions that in 1 week are going to be in ballot boxes, and I think it's important for us to, and look, it's not, I think that when any of our staff members, in particular, in this case, Betsy Shotwell gives recommendations, of course we can still choose whatever it is that we have a consensus on. It doesn't have to be consistent with our staff recommendation, but I think the staff recommendation is relevant and should be used at the very least for some guide. But at the end of the day, we always do what we collectively, 6 or more of us, decide we should do on the matter. And so these are state matters that we all should be aware of and educated on because they're coming to us in a week. And so if we're not, you can vote no position. If you don't feel comfortable, don't have enough information on it, that's fine. But these are things that we have typically voted on over the years that I've been on council. And whether it's on the oppose or support or no position, those are recommendations from staff. We have every ability and should be able to make motions that we feel represent the residents and the values of our residents. And so I think that right now the motion is simply for us to go forward as the Rules Committee had dictated by a majority vote. And I agree with the Rules Committee position, and I think that most people are going to be most pleased that I'll be held to 4 minutes later on. I think all of you will be happy because I certainly can speak for a very long time on many of these matters, and I approve of that limit because I also, on the flip side, do agree with the mayor's point that at the end of the day, these are positions we're taking. I think they're important, but there are other matters that we need to deal with that have to do with delivering services that do require, I think, further and more attention. And so I don't know if after that comment I can call the question, Mayor, if that's an appropriate thing, but I'm happy to do that.
I think a couple more folks want to speak. So
If I call the question, if there's a second.
then we have to vote on calling the question. That requires 2/3.
Okay.
So you can certainly try that motion if you like. Otherwise, I'm going to call on Councilmember Frost.
Okay. Well, it sounds like there's more than a third that want to speak. So,
Okay. Councilmember Frost.
I'll defer. It's fine.
Okay. I'll just say, for clarity's sake, I actually supported Councilmember Khamis's motion not to consider these at the Rules Committee. But I also recognize that motion failed. And given the fact that a significant number of council members want to consider these items, then I appreciated that we were able to come to some agreement on a compromise, at least a majority of us, and so I'm going to support that compromise. All right. There is a motion from Vice Mayor Herrera on that motion. All right, that motion prevails by 7-4 count. So now we move on to the rules